Good morning. Oh, it's loud. I don't have to get close. I'm so happy to see all of you here, and I'm really excited about this conference. I'm glad to see that everybody else is ready to go, and I think it's going to be really encouraging. Okay, now I'm usually a writer, not a speaker, so if it looks like I'm reading my notes, it's because I'm going to read my notes. Because otherwise, I just talk in circles. So I'm excited about this year's conference again, and I hope you are too. If you're like me, the subject of marketing can be scary and overwhelming. But I believe that our speakers have some insight about marketing that's going to help a lot. And I believe their message and insight goes beyond what we're usually taught. First, I just want to say that the fact that you're here means that you're different than most people. You look around and you see these are the people who know that they're called to be writers. I mean, we're not just doing this in high school anymore. We've continued. But then when we write, what do we do with our writing? So this is what we're going to talk about today. We've done it. We've continued to work on our craft, but then it just sits there. And so one of the things that I think you're going to find out today is that marketing can go beyond what we're usually taught. You might have noticed that most advertising and marketing seems selfish. Sometimes it's downright trickery. And we know that. And when people try to sell you something, they're not usually thinking about what's best for you, the customer. If they're thinking about you at all, they were probably taught to think of you as a target. The target audience. Like you're a bass or a trout in the river and they know what hooks or bait your type will bite on. And if you've been treated like this by salesmen, you might shy away from marketing your own books because you don't want to be associated with that. People who say, you need this is for your own good, they have a bad reputation all over the world. And we don't want to be one of them. In fact, I was putting this together and I read a news story that week when I was writing this, so I included it. I read this news story not too long ago that illustrates it. In Mexico, there were a group of government healthcare workers, and they tried taking some experimental shots to an Indian tribe in the mountains. And they tried and they failed because they were attacked and chased down the mountain. Because this tribe had heard the line, this is for your own good before, and they fell for it the first time, and the government had used their tribe as guinea pigs to do dangerous medical experiments on. And so they weren't going to fall for that again. Now, when you walk up to somebody with a book, they've been there. They've already heard this before. This is what you need. And most of the time they didn't need it. And the people were trying to trick them. So keep that in mind. People don't trust salesmen. We know that. And so we know why. But if we've written a book, and if you want to sell your book, then suddenly you're a salesman. And even if your book is published through a large publishing house, they will expect you to be busy selling your book. It's very hard to get around this. And so you don't want to be associated with a snake oil salesman. I made a note, unless you believe in snake oil. I really don't know anything about that. After I wrote that, I was like, what if it's good? Anyway, okay, back to the notes. But if you've written a book that's really good, and it's a book that could help someone, then people do need it. It really is for their own good. And you don't want to be like me. I have a way that I market. It's kind of like leave the books in the corner and say, if anybody wants one, they're over in the corner. And as we were talking about this conference, I started thinking maybe that's the selfish thing to do. Maybe I'm being selfish. Because I think my books really would help people. But I'm not telling anybody about them. So if the book is good and if it's going to be healthy and helpful, maybe the kindest, most selfless thing that we can do is market that book. Now let the world know what it is and why they need it and where they can get it. And I think that hopefully we can learn today that we can be different and we don't have to think of our audience as a target, but we should think about them and we should help them find what we're writing. So with that, I believe I'm to introduce our speaker. And if you're ready, okay. I would like to introduce RJ Thesman.
I think these are the handouts that we did go around. Well, it is delightful to be in a conference where I can actually see people in person and give hugs and get hugs and shake hands and speak face to face instead of on the computer screen. Although I am very grateful for the technology of Zoom that has carried us through the COVID years and kept me in business and been able to keep meeting with my clients online. But today, here we are, and I'm so glad for all of you who are here. I want to express special thank you to the team who put this all together. I've been so impressed with the organization that's happened here and every need being met and all these things, so congratulations to you. This is great. I also want to thank my clients who made the supreme effort to come. Those of you who are my clients or who have been my clients, would you raise your hands? So grateful for all of you. Okay. Marketing is not a dirty word. Once upon a time, there was a man named Jake who loved to bake donuts. And he perfected his recipe, felt like he had the best donuts ever. But he didn't really know what to do beyond baking his donuts. So his family and his friends said, well, why don't you open a store and sell your donuts? So Jake thought that was a pretty good idea. So he rented a little place not far from Kansas City and started his kitchen up and started baking his donuts. And he baked, and oh my, they smelled so good. And he knew he had the best donuts ever. And he had a nice little display rack that he put his donuts on. And then he waited for people to come. And nobody came. At the end of the day, he had all these donuts, so he gave them to the homeless population. And the next morning, he came back and he baked more donuts. And they smelled so good, and he knew he had the best donuts ever. But nobody came. And for several months, Jake went to his little store and he baked his donuts. And he loved how they smelled, and he knew they tasted good, and they were the best donuts ever. But nobody came. Finally, one lady came in the door. And Jake said, oh, I'm so glad to see you. Would you like a donut? And she said, well, and he said, oh, I'll give you a sample. And so, okay. So she took a little bite and she said, yeah, this is good, but I really came in for directions to I-35. Can you tell me? So Jake was a little bit nonplussed. And the lady said, you know, these really are the best donuts ever. But too bad nobody knows you're here. And so Jake went home. He was pretty discouraged, and his family said, well, why don't you put a sign over the door? And Jake said, well, I do have a little 8x12 sign on the door. It says best donuts. I said, no, why don't you put up a neon sign so people can see you? He said, well, those signs cost a lot of money. I'm going to wait until I have more money, and then I'll put up a sign. And his kids said, well, Dad, you're not on social media. And he said, I don't like social media. I don't like the people that post on there. I don't like some of their political comments, and I don't trust social media, and I don't want to do social media. And so then one of his friends said, well, why don't you put an ad in the paper? Do you know how much those ads cost? $225 for a little bitty paragraph. I'm not going to spend that kind of money. So Jake went to his store and baked donuts day after day, and the best donuts ever. And the homeless population kept getting fatter from all the donuts. And finally, Jake had to close down his store because nobody knew he was there. Through the years, I have heard so many comments about marketing. I hate marketing. I don't want to do marketing. I refuse to do marketing. I don't care about marketing. Marketing is the other side of my brain. I'm a creative person. I do not have to be a marketer. If God wants my book to get out there, God will make it happen. I don't have to help God do his job. So many comments. Nobody will ever read my book. Nobody will sign up for my blog. It doesn't do any good to do marketing. I've heard so many comments. And myself, I had to learn how to do marketing because it really is the other side of the brain. But there's so much competition out there that in order for your words to get out there and your message to get out there, you have to do marketing. You have to learn it. And so today we're going to learn some easy ways to do it, and hopefully this will help you over those humps of marketing. Key principle number 1, marketing is really just sharing the message. Sharing the message. But we focus too much on the negatives. Almost all the things that I spoke of a while ago, that the comments I've heard are negatives. Nobody will read my book. I don't want to do it. Marketing doesn't matter. They're negatives. And so we need to change our mindset from a negative mindset to a positive spin and flip it so that marketing is not a dirty word to us and we can actually get to the point where we enjoy marketing. So let's evaluate some of these negatives and see if we can make them more positive. One of the reasons why we don't do marketing is, reason number 1, we have forgotten our why. Our why gives us motivation and passion for our writing. It's the reason we became writers. It's the reason that we put this book together or this article together or the reason we wrote this poem. It's how and why we started in the first place. My experience is I started writing very early, probably about as soon as I learned the alphabet. I grew up on a farm and I would go out to my tree, I had my tree, climb up my tree with my red cheap tablet and my big fat pencil, and I would write my little stories. So I became a writer in the beginning because I couldn't not write. And when I was a teenager, Mom got me one of those little diaries, you know, that had a itty-bitty little key and lock, and I could lock it so my brother wouldn't read what I was saying. And so that was great. And then I graduated into journaling, and then after college, I started writing even more, and then I went to my very first writers' conference where I learned how to do publishing, how to do writing, how to send out a query, and after that everything just went crazy because I couldn't not write. Since then, most of my writing focuses on hope. Even with my novels, there's an underground invitation to hope. And my blog focuses on hope. So that is one of the reasons why I write, is to share my message of hope. So why do you write? Jot down a little sentence there. Why do you write? Now let's put a positive spin on our why. It's not the power of the messenger that you're marketing. It's not your power. It's not your yourself. It's not your gift. It's not your talent that you're really marketing. It's the power of the message that you're sharing. And you do have a message to share, no matter what kind of writing you're doing. If it's important, we find a way. If it's not important to us, we find an excuse. So here are some ways that you can put a positive spin on marketing. Do you have some Bible verses that you have hung on to through the years that have kind of helped you affirm your writing? Do you have a particular writing verse? Mine is Psalm 45:1. My tongue is the pen of a skillful writer. So if you have a verse like that, copy it off, put it on a card or whatever, right near where you write so that you can see it all the time and remind yourself. Or do you have a mission statement for your writing? Because most of us kind of need that sort of impetus to keep us going. Have you thought about dedicating the space where you write? When I moved into my house, the movers and I sang doxology to dedicate my house. And I often go through my writing space, my office, and rededicate it, recommit it to God. Do you have prayer partners that can hold you up and uphold you and pray for you and remind you that what you are doing is indeed important? So what is your positive spin for your why? Now here's where you can be creative. You can use this other side of the brain. So you can either star one of the ideas that I've given you here or write your own idea. How can you be more positive about your writing and sharing your message? Because your words are important. Your words do matter. Several years ago, I got an email from a gentleman named Sam. I don't know Sam. And I don't often get these kinds of emails, but this one was just so amazing. I had written an article for crosswalk.com about what happens when we die and what heaven is like and what it's like to go to heaven and all of that. And so Sam wrote me this email because he had lost his sister, and she was very dear to him. And he felt like my article kind of helped him in his grieving process. But Sam says, I am a hardened person, and I am not moved by much. When I read the story that you wrote, I started to cry. I knew that God had allowed my sister to speak to me. So the Lord does still work. And although He allows things to happen which make no sense, He also protects us in ways that we cannot comprehend. And He uses the tragedies and the near misses to pull us closer to Him. Somehow, you managed to break through to a cynical ex-politician like me who had begun to doubt God because of all the bad things happening. And I had also been questioning if doing the right thing even matters anymore. Thank you for sharing your story. I hope you keep doing what you are doing. That was an amazing and powerful email. When I wrote that article, I had no idea it was going to help Sam during this dark time in his life. And that's one of the hard things about marketing, is that we don't always know what the impact is. We won't know till we get to heaven and somebody comes up to us and says, I read your poem, I read your article, I read your book, and it changed my life. How many of you have read something, besides the Bible, we know that, you have read something that made an impact? Yeah. And if that writer had not marketed that particular piece of writing, you would not have read it, and you would not have had that impact. So, your words are important. Your words do matter. Good old Socrates said, yikes, the secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So let's determine to stop fighting those negatives and stop speaking those negatives and instead build on the positives. Build on the positive spin of why marketing is not a dirty word. Why we don't do marketing, reason number 2 is plain old fear. Fear of failure. We don't want to fear. We don't want to fail. We don't want to be rejected. We don't want to go through that feeling. Or we have a fear of success. Now that seems really strange. But there are a lot of people that fear success because they are afraid success might change their lives. And change is scary. We have a fear of comparisonitis. You know, ooh, I can't write like this person, so I'm not going to write at all. Or I can't market like this person, so I'm not going to market at all. Or I can't do like this person, so I'm not going to do it at all. We compare ourselves. We have a fear of what we don't know about writing, or about publishing, or about marketing. I'm going to, this weekend, in the second session, I'm going to tell you how to do it. So you can't use that excuse anymore. We have a fear of technical difficulties. Isn't this a big one? I'm afraid if I click on this, my computer will blow up and then I'll have to get a new computer. I'm afraid if I open this email, it'll have all kinds of viruses in it and then I'll be in big trouble. You know what? There are IT professionals out there that make a business out of helping us. And I'm really grateful for Jean and Kent and the people this morning that helped us set up the PowerPoint. So we can learn how to do the technical parts, or if we don't want to learn all that, we can call professionals. We have a fear of rejection. Yeah, we don't want to do it. We have a fear of self-doubt. I just don't think I can do it. I'm not sure I can do it. Nobody will buy my books. It doesn't matter. And self-doubt will lead us to self-sabotage. Self-sabotage will stop us. And then the words don't have an impact because we stopped. I added a couple of others that I thought about. One is we have a fear of spending money. Yes, we do have to be careful with our budgets. But to be serious about writing, you have to be serious about making a little bit of an investment in your writing. And if you do your marketing right, now I'm not going to promise you're going to get rich or be on Oprah or anything like that, but if you do the marketing right, you will get some income, a nice little income stream. So we have a fear of spending money, we have a fear sometimes of making money, and then there are some people who kind of have a legalistic mindset, and they're afraid of not trusting God for the results. If I go out there and do marketing, it means I'm trying to do it all by myself instead of trusting God. And if God wants it out there, God will make it happen. We'll talk about that later. Give yourself grace because God gives you grace. So what is our positive spin for fear? Well, determine where the fear is coming from in the first place. Are you believing lies from other people? Are you believing the lies you've told yourself? Are you believing that nobody will read your words? That's just not true. We have this amazing tool called the internet, which goes all over the world. How do you know that there's not some little person in Italy that just finished their spaghetti and now they're going to read your article? You don't know that. Determine where the fear is coming from. Because what we fear usually does not happen. You notice that in life? Usually the things we worry about that keep us up late at night never even happen. It's the surprises that get us. Rejection, get used to it. Rejection is a side effect of being a writer. Everybody who has been a writer for several years has a file full of rejections. Even the big top people who make six figures, they have rejections. We all get rejected, but that's okay. What a rejection really is that at that particular time in history, that particular editor did not need your message. It doesn't mean that this editor over here won't need it, because they might. And it sure doesn't mean that people out there in the world don't need your words, because they do. The way you deal with rejection is you say, well, you guys, I'll do it over here. Peer pressure. If I do marketing, my friends will think I'm begging for money. It's not about the money. It's about the message. Are we old enough that we don't need to mess around with peer pressure anymore? So what is your positive spin for fear? Which one of these ideas, or an idea that you have, being creative, how are you going to fight against that fear? There's probably some of you in this room that had a little bit of fear about coming this weekend. I don't want to spend all that money to go to a conference and meet all these people, and maybe somebody has COVID, and it won't do any good anyway because nobody will buy my book. Yikes. Yeah. What is your positive spin on fear? I'm so glad I came here this weekend and I got to meet all these people, and nobody has COVID because a bunch of us have been praying against that. And I'm going to learn some tools to help me market my message, because principle number one is marketing is really sharing the message. In 2018, I had the wonderful privilege of going to the Creatives Conference in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I met Julia Cameron. Julia Cameron pretty much changed my life as far as writing and artistry are concerned, because I read her book, The Artist's Way, and Julia has an entire series that's kind of about creativity, so I really highly recommend The Artist's Way and then her books that follow. She's an amazing, amazing woman, and I got to meet her in person, and it was just like one of those bucket list things, you know, that rarely happens. But Julia said, the reception of our work by others is none of our business. Our job is to do it. It's not my business what you think about my words. Even if you send me an ugly email, it's none of my business. That's just your opinion. My job is to share the message. My job is to do the writing and share the message. And there you go. That's it. Why we don't do marketing, reason number 3, we don't know how. Most of us have really not taken a marketing class. We are not in the business of marketing. That is the other side of the brain. We really don't know how to do it, and things that we don't know how to do feel a little bit fearful and a little bit discouraging. Or we've tried before and failed, or thought we failed. Just because we didn't make a whole bunch of sales or something doesn't mean we failed. Sometimes we forget that marketing is really a marathon. It's not a sprint. So it takes a little while, and it takes what I'm going to show you in session number 2 to really get going and to kind of get that flow. So you have to give yourself some patience and keep going at it. Sometimes we don't give it enough time to work. Have you heard the story about some guy that he was working and trying something, and it just didn't work, so he quit, not knowing that the very next day things were going to change. So that's the way it happens with marketing. You know, you work along for a while, you share the message for a while, and nothing may happen for a little while, and then all of a sudden, boom, something happens. And you think, phew, sure glad I did that marketing. We want it to be easier. We want marketing to be easier. But a lot of things in life take some struggle and take some work, and how many of us know that writing itself is not easy? Right. But we can learn how to make it easier, and in session 2 I'm going to show you how to do that, so don't leave. Good old St. Francis said, start by doing what is necessary, then do what is possible, and suddenly you are doing the impossible. I have clients that in our initial consultation, they say, you know, I'm really not a writer, but for some reason I think God wants me to do this. And so my question is, you know, are you doing any writing? Well, yeah, I wrote down an outline. Oh, guess what? You're a writer. And then we start working into it, and we take one little step at a time, and another step, and another step, and pretty soon they're doing the impossible, and they're getting a business card that says writer on it. We start with little steps, we do what seems impossible, and then pretty soon we're doing the whole thing. We're doing the impossible. We can learn. We can learn how to do marketing. We can learn to do it in a pretty easy way that's not going to take us a whole lot of time and that's going to have some effort. Several years ago, I was working part-time at a ministry job, and I clicked onto something on the internet just kind of accidentally, and I learned about Control Z. Control Z will undo what you just did. Well, that practically saved my life. When we make mistakes and we go, oh no, I broke the computer. No, Control Z. I learned that in one little moment, and boy, do I use that all the time. How many of you have had to learn how to use a computer? Because we started out with typewriters. How many of us have had to learn different kinds of software? We've had to learn the language of what a flash drive is and an HDMI cable is and all this stuff. We've learned it. We can also learn how to do marketing. But it takes some patience. It takes some timing. It takes some determination. How many of you think Google is your friend? My friend. There are tutorials all over Google that can show you marketing tools and give you some marketing places if you get stuck. You can do webinars, and you can also call in the professionals. Now, when you do that, yes, it's going to cost a little bit of money. Doesn't have to be terrible, though. My son is an IT guy. He works in a big medical group, Kansas City area. And so when people ask him what he does, he says, well, I work for brilliant doctors who don't know how to plug in their printer. And he often goes to offices and what's happened is they forgot to plug in the printer. They even called him in one time there was a surgery in process, and the computers in the surgery went out in the operating room. So he had to gown up and go in there and work on the computer and get it going again so they could finish the surgery. And he came home, he said, I'm so glad I'm not a doctor. He had seen too many things that day. But he's an IT professional. Fortunately, he's my son, so when I have trouble, Caleb, please come help Mom. But there are people like that everywhere. There's probably people in your church. There might even be people in your family, the younger generation who knows that computers are their first language. People in a college in your town that can help you. If you get stuck, call in the pros. And then, coming to conferences is a great way to learn how to do writing, to learn how to do marketing, to learn how to do these things. And you're in luck. You get to hear about it. Session number 2, I'm going to show you how. It's really easier than you think. So what is your positive spin for, I just don't know how? We can learn how to do marketing. One of my best examples for learned marketing is Nanette Holloway, and I asked her permission if I could share this today. She came to me several years ago and wanted to write a memoir about her dad's journey through cancer. She was a hospice nurse, and she was helping him through that experience. But she was also, she and her dad were reconciling some differences, and God was just doing a beautiful thing in her life and in his life, so that when he passed, it was a beautiful and glorious thing. And so she wrote this beautiful, amazing memoir. She was only going to write one book. Before You Depart, God's Touch Before Eternity, about that experience. And so she did the writing process, and then we talked about marketing, and she listened. And she learned, and she started doing a lot of really great, effective marketing, particularly on LinkedIn. Because she's a nurse and because she has credibility and she can get in with groups and all that, she did a lot of marketing on LinkedIn, and I see her there all the time because that's also one of my places. Well, then she said, you know, when I was dealing with my dad, there was a lot of caregiving. Do you think I could write a book about caregiving? Of course. So she wrote Coping Skills for Caregivers. And what an important and wonderful book that's evergreen because there are so many caregivers around the world. Well, then we talked a little bit about when you write a how-to book, it's good to have a workbook to follow it so that people can, you know, write their own answers and all that, and you can sell them together as a bundle, and it's a great thing for workshops. And so she wrote the Coping Skills for Caregivers workbook. Well, by that time, she was really into the writing thing and discovering this beautiful prose that was coming out of her soul. And so then she was speaking at writers' groups. Well, one of the things I always tell my clients is if you do a workshop and you do a speaking event, then use your content that you've already researched and worked on and make a book. So she did. Her book is called Jumping Hurdles to Writing Success. And so then she was able to share that book and sell that book whenever she spoke. Well, then she realized that gratitude was a big part of her life and a big part of her spiritual life and a big part of this journey, and so she wrote about the gratitude journal. And then she wrote a gratitude journal for caregivers. I mean, it was just amazing. These things just kept bubbling out of her and just kept coming and coming. One day she emailed me and she said, "What is Amazon JP?" And I said, "Japan." She said, "I just sold 400 books to Japan." Her marketing paid off, not only in those 400 books, but the impact that her words had all over the world. And all she did was share the message. So, Nanette, raise your hand. Nanette's here. So follow Nanette on her blog, NanetteHolloway.com. And see how, connect with her on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, see how she does marketing. We can learn how to do marketing. Why we don't do marketing, reason number 4, we don't really think marketing matters. Here's where we get into the danger of generalizations. Nobody will read my book. Everybody else has a blog. My blog doesn't count. Nobody cares about poetry anymore. Nobody will read poetry. Nobody will buy poetry. Nobody pays any attention to marketing. Everybody hates marketers. It's all negative. And there's a real danger in generalizations in any part of life that we do that, because it's simply not true. What if we change that to somebody? Somebody will buy my book. Somebody will read my poem. Somebody will read my article. Somebody will sign up for my blog. Somebody. See the difference? Or we believe the numbers game. The numbers game is where you go to your analytics on Amazon and there haven't been any sales for a month or so. Or it's where you go to your analytics on your blog and you don't see a lot of new followers. And you get caught up in that numbers game. I had a couple of clients that were just so ingrained in that negativity of, oh, the numbers just aren't there. So I said, what if you stop looking at the numbers? Oh, okay. We believe the lies. We believe the negatives. We don't have to believe the lies. We don't have to believe the negatives. You fight negatives with the truth. Or we've had a blog and we've sold books and we don't have any comments and we don't have any reviews and we get discouraged. And I can't tell you why people don't comment very much on blogs because it's so easy to do. I can't tell you why people don't write reviews because it's so easy to do. I do it all the time. But for some reason people don't do it. And maybe because they don't know how, or maybe they're afraid, if I post my name here, the world will know who I am, and then I'll get all kinds of hackers and scammers and problems. Nay, that's probably not going to happen. Don't worry about something that's probably not going to happen. Or we're stuck in the whole I can't thing. I can't do marketing. I've tried it, and I'm not going to try it again. I'm not going to do it. We've forgotten key principle number 1. Marketing is really just sharing the message. So what can be a positive spin that we put on why marketing matters? Well, we can learn to help each other. If you have a friend or somebody in your writing group who has a blog, comment. All you have to do is say, thank you for this post, I liked it. Boom. Or one of the things I like to do is copy a phrase or something that's in the blog post and say, love, love, paste the phrase, boom. Doesn't take long, so easy. Help each other with reviews. You have friends, people that you know who have written books, and you've read the book and you liked it, post a nice review on Amazon. It's just so easy to do. Or send an encouraging email like Sam did for me. Or send a card. I'm still in the demographic that likes greeting cards. I send them out and I like to get them. You know, what it does to your soul when you get something like that in the mail. In fact, I have an encouragement file where I put Sam's email and some of the cards and other emails I've gotten through the years. And when I have one of those down days, and yes, I have them too, when I have one of those down hard days, I pull out my encouragement file and I read through it and I say, okay, share the message. This is what counts. Impacting people is what counts. Get rid of the discouragement. Keep going. The dream shelf is something you can try. When I started becoming a professional writer just means you get paid for it. I mainly was doing articles and stories, but then I started graduating into books, and I really had this dream. I wanted to see my books in the library, and I wanted to see my books on a shelf. So I cleared off this space on my bookshelf for my books. It was empty, but it was there. I would dust it every week and say, someday my books will be there. Well, one day there was a book. Then there was another one, and now there's 20 of my books. But what's really exciting to me is, at the last count, I have 27 of my clients' books. So it's been such a privilege and joy for me to be a midwife and help them birth their words, and to see those books on that dream shelf. Your target audience, your message matters to someone. Your marketing, that message matters to someone. So think about who your target audience is. Is it a particular demographic of people? Is it the millennials? Or is it people who have been through the Alzheimer's journey? Is it people who have done caregiving? Is it Christian women in a certain demographic? Now don't just say, I want my book to go to everybody. Because, well, of course we want that. But marketers will tell you that the more narrow your niche is, the easier it is to sell to those people. So think about who your target is, and even go on the internet and find a picture of somebody that is in your target audience and post a picture in your office so you can say, I'm writing for you. I'm sharing my message to you, whoever that is. Remember that even one heart matters. The numbers don't matter. The people who receive the message is what matters. And right now, there's a little lady over in Italy, or Australia, or Japan, or a young person who's struggling with life, and they click on to your blog, or they find your book, or they see an article that you wrote, and it made a difference to that one heart. Your message matters. It's about the message, it's not about the results. So what is your positive spin on why marketing matters? Good old Isaiah. Isaiah is one of my favorite of the books of the Bible. You know, somebody marketed the book of Isaiah. Somebody marketed the entire canon of the Bible. When Moses wrote the Pentateuch, he didn't just hide it in his tent. He told people about it. Shared the message. We have this amazing book because somebody marketed it. And every time there's a new version that comes out of the Bible, they do a lot of marketing, don't they? They want to make sure everybody's got one. Marketing matters. Isaiah 45, I am the Lord and there is no other. Apart from me, there is no God. I will strengthen you so that from the rising of the sun to the place of its setting, people may know there is none beside me. How will people know if we don't share the message? It is not the responsibility of the pastors to share the message alone. God has given us this amazing gift of words and the beauty of the gift of putting them together in a way that makes sense so that we can share that message and impact the world and make a difference. I would like to share my mission statement with you, and then during today, if you want to share your message with me, I would love to hear that. Or you can email me your message, your mission statement. My mission statement is to share the message of hope so that my readers and my followers will be encouraged. That's it. That's my mission statement. It matters. We can't really live without hope. So, the world out there is hungry for your message, whether it's a poem or an article or a book or a blog or an essay or whatever it is. The world is hungry for your message. Somebody out there needs to know the message. Key principle number 1, marketing is really sharing the message. See you later.